Welcome to the Value Investor TV podcast. This is the podcast that helps you grow your wealth and become financially independent. My name is Beko and my partner Hari.
Hello.
All right, we are continuing our discussion of what this new presidency, new government, American government would mean for you as an investor, and especially as it relates to a lot of the trade tension that's been going around in the past 4 years with the Trump administration and how that's going to change or not change under a new administration. So we'll talk about that in this episode. Before we start, Hari, can you start us off with a disclaimer?
Yeah, this is the Value Investor TV podcast. We're a podcast that helps you understand the concepts behind value investing. We are not financial advisors. We don't know your specific financial situation, so please consult with the appropriate advisor before making any financial decisions.
Excellent. All right. So we talked a lot about various industries in the last episode, right? We talked about banking sector, oil and gas, tech, healthcare, taxation, stimulus, lockdown. And we ended the last podcast with trade conflicts.
Yep.
That the Trump administration has been waging for the past 4 years, and how that is going to change under a new administration. And so, in this episode, we'll specifically talk about what the relationship would look like between U.S. and China, U.S. and the Middle East, U.S. and our North American partners, Mexico and Canada, and then lastly, U.S. and Europe. So we'll go down in that order. So U.S. and China, what will happen there obviously has been very heated for the past 4 years. What's going to happen there, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think, under the Trump administration, Trump has been kind of one of the few presidents that has called, or world leaders that have kind of called China out on their shenanigans, and we have seen in under the last 4 years, China has kind of taken over Hong Kong, has kind of shifted, has become, tried to consolidate power under Xi, so there's been a big shift, right, in the kind of the China mentality, right, that they've kind of put their tentacles into lots of different places in Africa. They're strip mining in Mexico. I mean, they're all over the place, right? And Trump was kind of the only person that was kind of saying, like, look, they're manipulating their currency. They're doing all of these things to kind of keep themselves out of the spotlight, or to benefit them at the cost of other people. And if you are kind of paying attention, they have not had anybody really call them out since the 70s, right? When Nixon kind of normalized relations with China, China kind of abandoned their socialist economy and replaced it with a capitalist economy, and since has been kind of, but they don't maintain the freedom that we see in the U.S., right? And so eventually that's going to catch up to them. Their economy will not be able to grow if they continue to try and have state control over everything. And now I think under a Biden administration, I think a lot of those policies are going to be reversed, right? We're going to see tariffs and things like that, potentially go away, in the name of, quote unquote, better relations with China, right? Now, I don't think that that's actually in the best interest of the United States, right? Because, I mean, if you have a moral compass, you should care about the fact that, China has has a terrible human rights record, and and it is coming at the cost of of getting things for cheap, right? But I don't know that that the under the Obama administration, it was very much a we turned a blind eye to what China is doing on a lot of different levels, on trade and other things. So,
Yeah, I think one thing that I would like to certainly credit Trump for doing is kind of change in tone as we talk about China. I think some of the stuff that he unearthed, things like very lopsided trade policies, trade imbalances, very much protectionist policy when it comes to companies trying to operate out of China, but then over here that's not the same sort of imbalance, unbalanced playing field and whatnot. Then of course, not to mention all the human rights abuses and whatnot. So I think the tone of tone of our discussion, political discussions around China, I think has changed for the better, in my opinion.
yeah.
But of course, there's some downsides to that, of course. And I wonder how that will change under Biden administration. Some pundits are saying that he is even more going to be strong-headed towards China than Biden, and some are saying no, he's going to revert back to the good old days. And I'm not quite sure how that will shake out there.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
either. I think we'll have to see.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see, because if you are, there are quite a few stocks that are in, Chinese companies that are traded in the U.S., right? And I think, the Chinese government is also trying to wrest more control of those, state-owned businesses. So,
Yeah.
trade may be only one factor in what we're seeing.
Yeah. Absolutely. Let's move on to the next segment. Here is the Middle East. We talked about this before the podcast, but take it away, Hari. What do you think will happen here in the Middle East?
Yeah, so it's I think one of the things that is I think the media has done a terrible disservice to Trump is they have kind of normalized relations between many countries in the Middle East, right? And so Israel has kind of been the pariah in the Middle East, and now we are seeing that places like UAE has signed a peace agreement. The Abraham Accords is what they're calling it. So the UAE has signed an agreement with Israel. Bahrain is signed on to that, and it's kind of the framework agreement that would allow for other countries to join. The biggest of which is Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and the idea here is that Sudan was labeled a terrorist country for the longest time. Sudan is supposed to pay back a debt to the United States, and in doing so, we would provide them with funding and other things to kind of help them develop quickly. So what this means is that you have a country like Israel, very small place. You're opening this up to trade, and allowing it, places in the Middle East to grow tremendously. And that growth could have a huge impact on making many more people available to, what we would consider the middle class here. And that means that they're buying goods that the U.S. is making. They're making, doing lots of things that are beneficial to, U.S. companies. It's hard for me to tell if that is going to be in jeopardy. I don't think it would be under a Biden administration. I think, the terrible there. I mean, Obama did some fairly terrible things with the Middle East balance of power, including, shipping, cash to Iran, and what these Abraham Accords are kind of doing is making a shift the balance of power, in that it's essentially this Abraham Accords group versus the Iran Palestinian, kind of group, right? Trying to create a different balance of power. And this would allow a tremendous economic growth in the UAE, Israel, and other countries that sign up. So from a U.S. standpoint, I think this is going to be a big boon because now there's a lot more trade that can happen with a lot of countries that were previously kind of closed off, right, in the world.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's a classic opportunity for the ascendance of people into the middle class in these countries whereas in the past they just didn't have the opportunity to do so, and that allows for the opportunity for American companies and companies more globally to service that population as they are increasing their consumption.
Right.
So so that's something to watch out for. I imagine some industries, some specific industries and segments will, and perhaps if this segment becomes big enough, they'll probably mention Middle East strategy, just like how people talk about China strategy,
Yep.
the Southeast Asia strategy. Middle East strategy could be one of the things that people actually report on. So that could be really exciting. Third one, USMCA, our northern and southern neighbors here in North America. Do you think anything will change there in the new administration?
I don't have much insight into that. I don't think that much would change there because that was an agreement that was replacing NAFTA, which NAFTA was in and of itself somewhat lopsided, and so I think it's a better agreement overall, and I don't know that it's going to change that much under a new administration.
Yeah. Okay. I don't have anything else to add to that one. Let's move on to the last segment, which is Europe. Our friends over in Europe. What will happen to the trade relation with U.S. and Europe there?
Yeah, so I mean, Trump kind of took the same track that he did with China with our neighbors in the across the pond, right? And kind of made a, you know, essentially said like, look, as NATO countries, you're not spending an appropriate amount of money to, uh, on military and things like that. So I think the risk that comes from this is that a lot of that was being enforced through trade and tariffs and things like that. Now, if that were to happen, if those things were kind of reversed, right? It is we go back into the trade that is favorable back to the EU more so than it is to the US, right? So we're it's just more of a shift of the balance of of power in that segment. So now how much will that actually change? I don't know, right? It's hard for me to tell. I think the right now the EU has going to have to climb out of the coronavirus mess, right? And it may take them a very long time to do that, right? Those countries are shutting down much harder than the US is. Stimulus is going to be much more difficult for them to accomplish. And I think that, what we are seeing right now is we have not even seen the full consequences of coronavirus lockdowns and shutting down the economy and stuff like that. It's not a light switch. You can't just turn it off and turn it back on. And we're going to see, I think, a worse recession in the EU for the next, 5 years, because they were already on the brink even when things were doing well, right? Heavily indebted, very, very much expensive, social programs and things like that were limiting GDP growth. So it's going to be interesting to see if there are countries in the EU that go bankrupt and things like that as a result of lockdowns and things like that. So I don't know, I don't have the foresight to look into that crystal ball, but I think the usual sectors that are successful right now, like tech, will continue to be successful, and then the more hard asset kind of businesses are going to be that are EU based are going to suffer more.
Yeah, just to harp on that point about debt and GDP growth in Europe. I think it's going to be something that's going to be it's going to be something that we all have to watch out for. I mean, this could be, as you said, Hari, right? Countries like France or Italy or Spain. Um, they were eking out a very anemic growth even before coronavirus, and now add on top of that obviously coronavirus lockdown and economic sort of downward pressure on economy, but also on top of that, you got massive social programs and massive additional debt that they laid on because of the coronavirus with all these stimulus package. So it's going to be, I just feel like it's going to be a long sagging decline for a long time.
Yeah, and if they are not able to quickly recover, I think it's going to be one of those things that it's going to take a very long time for them to get back to normal. Just economically.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So, trade relations with U.S. and various parties, China, Middle East, U.S. and or Mexico and Canada, and now Europe. Um, Obviously, this is a kind of a turbulent time for the country, and I think for the world with coronavirus and whatnot. So, it's something that we all should watch out for as an investor in the market. Look for opportunities that you might find in small pockets, um, and just be aware of what's coming down the pipeline in terms of regulations, and keep your finger on the pulse of how this administration will shape kind of the geopolitical and kind of trade relationships with various parties across the world. So, and obviously that's going to have outsized impact on how companies perform across the board.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. Any last words, Hari?
Yeah, I think we have been telling you guys this for a long time, but we have a Slack channel that if you are interested in joining our community, email us at info@valueinvestor.org. If you have any questions or comments, please same email info@valueinvestor.org. We're happy to answer your questions about value investing or take criticism on the podcast, or whatever you'd like to talk about. We're happy to do that. And the other thing is, if you if you were watching us on on YouTube, leave a comment, subscribe to our channel. We try and put out an episode every week. Sometimes we don't hit that, but we'd love for you to follow us on this journey. I mean, we've done this now for a couple of years, and it's been a lot of fun, and we want to keep it going. So please leave us a comment on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. We'd really appreciate it.
Excellent. All right. Awesome. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks.
All right. Bye.